All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the Buyers on Demand podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, Tara. Tara, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. For everyone that is tuning in for the first time and is unfamiliar with this podcast was designed by the host here, Sean Stewart. That's me talking. I was in the real estate media world for quite some time, where I was doing photos and videos for real estate agents here in Las Vegas. I did that with a business partner who unfortunately had health complications very recently, and that has rendered him completely unable to do anything physically anymore. And so we had to take our skill sets, our knowledge, our expertise, and our conversations that we were having with realtors and put it into a digital lens instead of these in-person conversations inside the homes that we were trying to advertise. And so this podcast is designed to share some of the insights, the secrets that we learned during our time with real estate media, talking to real realtors out there on a digital screen here, so that listeners at home, especially newer agents, can gain as many insights as possible without having to rely on any third party to do so. And for anyone listening at home, Tara's going to be an amazing guest to give us some insights here, because Tara is I said this when we were just talking, Tara. I call you a media first realtor, but we'll call you a media powerhouse. A media powerhouse. Tara is ADTV Network, American Dream TV Network co host, guest, um, TEDx attending member. I don't even think we touched on that previously. Extensive experience when it comes to radio, pretty much all forms of media, and is has the pleasure of working with a absolute brand mastermind by the name of Tara. Do you want to describe Tyler Mount?
Tyler Mount. He
Yep.
is a powerhouse as well. I'm very lucky to work with Tyler.
Mm,
He was Ryan Serhant's brand manager, I believe. So
there we go.
he's the guy. He's got all kinds of experience. He's making me so much better.
There we go. So Tara's working, as you heard it, Tara's working with Ryan Serhan's brand manager. She has a rapidly growing personal brand herself. I think this conversation lends to so many great directions when it comes to branding, media, marketing in today's day and age. And Tara, I just gave a brief description about everything that I've learned about you just recently. For the audience listening at home, how would you describe yourself?
Wow, it's so interesting to hear someone else describe me, right? But yeah, I think that I work in the intersection of real estate and media, and certainly marketing is something that I not only enjoy, but has really become the center of everything that I'm doing. So media helps with that a lot.
I love it. I love it. Tara, walk us through the very beginning of your story. What does the origin story of Tara Polley look like? How did you get into the media world? Did you always know you wanted to be a realtor? Well, walk us through the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, media has always fascinated me. I did work here in the Bay Area. There was a hip hop radio station called KMEL back in the 90s. It was very popular, and I became a producer at KMEL for many years for the afternoon drive time show. And it introduced me to media for sure, and it gave me some experience in it. So I've always enjoyed that. I didn't really get into real estate until I got married. I had little kids, and I was, mistakenly thinking that real estate would be one of those things that would give me a lot of free time to volunteer in their classroom or be there for them when they got out of school or take them to their games. Little did I know, real estate is more than a full time job, but luckily I had a really supportive partner. So that was 25 years ago. Real estate looked really, really different at the time. I mean, it was Thomas Brother guides and fax machines and, the beginning of the internet. So
Mhm.
I'm dating myself. I'm like a dinosaur. But to see it now and see the AI and see, the way that we're able to use, I got to make a Michael Bay video to sell a house now, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's changed a lot.
So this is actually a great topic. Let's talk about the then and now. What was marketing a home like? And I hate to date you in any of this questionnaire,
It's
but
the reality.
25 years ago,
Yeah.
when you're trying to sell homes, like what were realtors doing then versus what they're doing now? Because you mentioned the Michael Bay listing videos. I think that's
Yeah.
hilarious, and I totally can see that. Can you give us like maybe some similarities, maybe differences between then and now?
Yeah, I think the one thing that hasn't changed, and I don't believe will ever change, no matter AI, whatever the case may be, it's relationships, right? That is the number one thing that will never, ever change. And that was how you sold real estate back in the day. We didn't have the MLS like we have it now. You didn't even have pictures of homes. You would get this like booklet that was dropped off every week with all the new listings, and you would go through it and try and figure out which one met the needs of one of your clients. We had Thomas Brother guides that you had to like pull the maps out and like map out your route to show properties. So it was really like, networking with other realtors and developing relationships with people and understanding your clients' needs and what they needed and like going out and finding that for them. So I think that's still relevant today. But it's interesting because I was thinking about this earlier, how I've been through so many phases of real estate, and in every phase, they always say, "Oh, realtors are going to become irrelevant. Oh, you're going to go out of business. We're going to replace the realtor." And that's what we're hearing with AI these days. And I just don't think it's true. And it wasn't true with email, or like when fax machines became email, or internet, was introduced, or any of those things. It's all tools that we can take advantage of and use. For our clients. But those relationships, I think, will always stay relevant.
I love it. I love it. And that's exactly what I see. At the end of the day, everything comes down to conversations
Yep.
is what I'm starting to learn when talking with all these realtors is you have all these different tools to gather conversations, but it doesn't matter the strategy per se. It's always about just how do you get in some sort of room or conversation with someone to start that kind of connection. So I love everything that you're saying about building relationships. When you were first getting into the world of real estate, what were some of your go-to techniques, tactics, or strategies to create those relationships that you're describing?
Yeah, when I first got into real estate, I would say like open houses were a big deal. They still are. It's an opportunity to build a relationship with someone, showcase your value, have a real conversation with them. So it was much more relevant back then because you had less technology to lean on. So you really did have to like sit in the house and invite people in and try and get in front of them. So that was a big tool. Again, networking. But media, I think it's like you said, getting in the room with people. Media has always been the way to do that, and to kind of get your foot in the door in places that maybe you wouldn't otherwise. And that's certainly what, American Dream has done for me, where it's giving me the opportunity to give first. I think that a lot of times with real estate, we introduce ourselves as realtors and people go, "Oh, well, I'm not selling a house right now, and I know like 50 realtors, and my best friend and my mom and my sister and my cousin are all real estate agents." And we kind of try to get away from you as quickly as possible. But with American Dream, it's really great because I'm able to say, "Hey, I'm a television host." And then people lean in instead of running away, and they kind of go, "Well, what does that mean? What do you mean you're a television
Yeah.
host? Tell me more about that." And then you start to talk to them and you say, "Well, I'm really interested in your business. What do you do?" "Oh, that sounds great. Maybe we could sit down for coffee and talk more about that and how we can maybe feature you on the show." And then you're offering something to them instead of taking, which I think is always a great way to start a relationship.
And before ADTV, you had some experience in the radio world. How do you, for anyone that's, again, I'm always trying to think in the lens of like a newer agent, especially in these times with rapidly evolving AI, rapidly evolving social media. And for people that are just getting onto social media, it can feel very overwhelming for someone that looks at someone like a Ryan Serhant, like you brought up, versus maybe just, a local realtor who has 100 followers. And like, how the heck am I ever going to keep up with these people that are posting 10 times a day, blah, 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 blah. And the first question that comes to that person's mind is, well, what's the first step? It sounds like one of the first steps for you was maybe the radio world. Am I wrong in that assumption? Like, just does any of that radio world kind of tie into becoming an ADTV prominent member?
Sure. I mean, I think it got my feet wet a little bit. I got to see how all of that worked. It was a great introduction. I was also, a communications major and marketing major. So this is right in my wheelhouse. It always has been. It's something I really enjoy. I think, what's really important, I actually have gotten into public speaking, and my keynote is called The Confidence Conspiracy, because I do think that there are so many brilliant people who play small because they don't know how to start. They're not sure where to start. They maybe start some content and then they save it in their phone and they think about posting it later, or they're worried about the pimple on their face, or their voice sounds weird, or their hair looks bad that day. And I think it's all about micro bravery and just like putting yourself out there, even if you don't think you're ready. It's really how the American dream has come to like literally change my life. Because the truth is that even though media is something I've always liked taking advantage of, I've always been a little shy as well. Like, I don't even like getting up at the MLS meetings and pitching my listing in front of 20 realtors I've known for 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, it would scare me. So, when the American Dream approached me to become a host, the reason I did it is because I was afraid to do it. And so sometimes you just have to take that leap before you're ready and then let that bring you the confidence as you do it. And, give yourself permission to fail, or give yourself permission to suck at it for a little while, because we all have to start somewhere. And I think until you actually give it a try, you won't really know. So you might as well give it a try. And you'll be surprised, honestly, because I really, you also think about, am I going to run into a lot of criticism? Are people going to be, rolling their eyes, talking about me behind my back? Honestly, people really want to see you succeed more than you realize. So I had a lot of people cheering me on, and that was actually surprising to me.
I kind of want to touch on that term micro bravery. It seems like, although we have this podcast, we're talking to this audience. A lot of what you're saying, as you're saying it, I can't help but like have that kind of pierce into me a little bit. Yeah, like I feel personally attached to what you're saying about this um, constant analysis of what people might think about me. I'm seeing that right now, like this newly created podcast, as well as my social medias. I really just got started in January here, and the social medias have been rapidly growing for me, and I'm seeing a lot of traction for this type of endeavor, as well as my page that I'm talking about. And I'm constantly thinking like, man, is this like, what are these people really thinking about me? Am I in the right space? This kind of imposter syndrome sometimes, if you will,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of people probably can relate to that as well, especially if you're a newer realtor. You've never sold a home before. It's like, how do I get that bravery to feel like I am good enough? And you mentioned this term micro bravery. I'm curious if we can kind of touch on that a little bit. What do you mean by that term, and how can someone apply that?
Yeah, I think micro bravery is really just doing things before you might be ready and just taking small steps toward what it is that you might want to learn or do. And consistency is a big part of that. I think as long as you just keep doing it, to me, what I notice is that there are a lot of people out there that are so brilliant, but they're not putting themselves out there. And so instead, you see people who are not as qualified or not as knowledgeable, but they're louder. And so they've got the confidence to just speak their mind. And then the people who really have something to contribute and say are quiet. And we need more of those people to just give it a shot and put themselves out there and be consistent with that, because that's where you see the success.
And this is a really interesting point, and you're the perfect person to bring it up, because for anyone listening, and now this goes into the fears around posting content. I mean, we're talking to Tara here, who has been on nationally recognized television, and so in terms of you, and even for me, like sometimes the fears of like, okay, I'm going to post this video and so might, comment on this, and maybe they're going to share and make fun of me or whatever the case is. Like you mentioned, a lot of those fears of criticism and negativity really just exist in our minds at times. I'm curious, when you were first seen on television, like when you're watching your first couple episodes, whatever the case is, on American Dream TV, and now it's being pushed, kind of nationwide. I'm curious, did you see any of the backlash or criticism that maybe you envisioned in your head at the time, or what was the reception?
Not at all. Yeah, no, I've actually had nothing but positive comments. I've had people cheering me on, even people in the industry, right? Like, I figured that my competitors in my own market would, and maybe they do behind my back, I don't know, right? But honestly, that's not my problem. I don't care what anybody has to say. Like, who
Right,
cares? I'm in my own bubble. I'm doing my own thing.
right.
I'm being me. I mean, part of that was, my kids have moved out. I'm an empty nester. And so being a mom for as long as I was, that became my sole identity. And I really had to sit down, and American Dream helped me with this, honestly, becoming a host, because I had to sit down and think about, like, who am I outside of being a mom? What do I like to do? What interests me? And for me, it kind of came down to, like, okay, I love dogs. I like to watch sports. I'm a big hockey and football fan. I like country music, festivals, things like that. And so knowing those things and taking the time to really understand myself and what I was, interested in, I started gravitating toward that content. And what I loved about that and, featuring that on American Dream, all of a sudden I started attracting the people that also loved those things. And now I've got things in common with my audience or the people that I'm talking to. And I'm building a tribe of people who are constantly cheering me on. We have things in common. They love my content because we have all of that. So I think as long as you're being authentic to yourself and you're really thinking about not pleasing the audience, but talking about what you're passionate about and what you love, then you're always going to find the people that are cheering you on.
We had this is a great topic now again. Man, there's so many things that we can talk about here in this discussion. It's like it just keeps progressing to like,
Yeah.
oh man, I can spend an hour on here, here.
Yes.
We had Alex Quate on the show. Loved
Yes.
Alex. She was awesome.
Love Alex.
She similarly to what you just described, you and her, as you're telling this to the audience, I'm literally thinking I'm talking to Alex again because the two of you have such a strong understanding of yourself, your interests, and then also reflecting that in the content that you create. When we spoke with Alex, she mentioned her identity of being a mom, her love for AI, her love for different types of sports and whatnot, and and then her coffee. I'm trying to remember what she called it. Like her crisis,
Conversations and
coffee,
coffee.
yeah, exactly, coffee and conversations. And when you look at her page, she has all of these wrapped in a nice little package on her page where especially Alex, where she's very authentic. She'll say like, no makeup on, in the car driving,
Yeah.
going to pick her kids up from school. Hey guys, here's what's going on and so forth. And this is a really interesting conversation, especially for someone that is creating a personal brand for the first time. We tend to think about like, okay, how do I balance my interests as well as what I'm trying to attract in terms of business? Because if I talk too much about my interests, I might start to attract people that like, for example, hockey, but maybe not so much people that are trying to buy or sell real estate. And so, how do you successfully blend your interests, your skill sets, your personality traits with a page that is designed to potentially attract buyers and sellers?
Yeah, I think that people are coming to your social media to learn more about you. So for me, real estate is one facet of who I am. And it really is like part of my identity. I've been doing it for so long. I don't know I'm always going to sell real estate, no matter what kind of media I get involved in, or, if I'm doing public speaking or if I'm doing whatever, it always comes back to real estate for me. So being able to blend that content. Like sometimes I'm posting about, American Dream and what we just filmed. Sometimes I'm posting about my latest listings. Sometimes I'm posting, tips and tricks for buyers and sellers. But the thing you have to remember with real estate is that it's usually sort of like an isolated moment in most people's lives, right? I mean, they do it a couple times in their life, maybe. So you're not you really want to be the person they think of when they get to that point. And if you have other things in common in the meantime, then you're more likely to be in front of them when they come to that decision. And it's really just about familiarity, like letting people get to know you. If they can't get to know you in person, at least they can get to know you online. I have a lot of people who reach out to me. We've never met, but they feel like we have. They feel like friends or family or whatever the case may be. So, it's just that authenticity and trying to wrap all of it together. And then meanwhile, I'm posting my listings or my open houses or whatever the case may be. So,
And this is unique for you because you are partnered with Ryan Serhant's former brand manager, and so you probably have a very deep understanding of what it means to build said personal brand. And my question to you is, in this topic of conversation here, what insights have you learned while working with Tyler Mount when it comes to building this brand that people resonate with this deeply and say, this person is me to the core?
Oh, what a great question. I mean, I think the thing is with Tyler, you know, what's great is, Tyler does a lot of coaching around real estate for most people. When I went to Tyler, I could do real estate in my sleep, really. So it was really for me being new to media and needing some direction around that. And so not only has Tyler worked with Ryan Serhant, but he's worked at NBC Universal. He's a producer on Broadway. He just won an Olivier Award in London the other day. Like he's got a stronghold in media. And so I guess the point is you don't have to be an expert at everything, but find an expert and then learn from them. And Tyler has really taught me a lot. And as we've developed the new show, which is a spinoff of American Dream, we call it the Haute Sheet. He's really helped me develop that around my interests, around my personality. It's become another extension of my branding. And he also has, like all kinds of services, like, developing the logo, creating sort of the whole foundation for what we want it to be and where we want it to go. We want it to be more than just a television show. We want it to be, that's the platform that you start with. But then from there, there's a website, there's referrals to other businesses, there's, where to go in wine country, all of these things. It becomes like this little curated world that you create for people. And he's helped me figure all of that out.
I love it. I love it. You mentioned the Hot Sheet. We haven't talked about it so much on this episode yet.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about this? You mentioned a spinoff of ADTV that you and Tyler are now producing. What is this show? What's the goal of it? Where can they find this?
Yeah, thank you. So it's the hot sheet, which we spell HAUTE. The idea is that in real estate, a hot sheet is kind of all of the newest activity, right? The new sales, the new listings, everything that's gone into contract in the last 24 hours. It's all the latest information in real estate is what we refer to as a hot sheet. And then by changing the spelling from HOT to HAUTE, it's elevated, it's sophisticated, it's all the things in wine country that you want to know about. And so it's really lifestyle culture. I call it a love letter to Bay Area living, because it really is, being in real estate, we do so much more than sell houses. We know our communities. We know where the best dog parks are. We know where the best restaurants are. We're always out being social. We're part of charities. I'm personally on the board of directors for the North Bay Cancer Alliance. So we're really integrated into our community. And the Hot Sheet is an opportunity to showcase that and show people why the wine country is beautiful, why the Bay Area is exciting. We just had Super Bowl here. We were able to feature Tony Dungy and his charity, which is Super Baskets of Hope, where they give, baskets to children who are in the hospital and going through hard times. They bring those to them during Super Bowl week. So we were able to focus on that. I mean, it's just so many opportunities to tell people stories. And I really think that that's what makes the community, is the story behind whatever it is that you're saying, the business, the people, the event. And that's where the magic lives.
That's exactly the past two conversations I've had. They've both mentioned storytelling, and then the third person that comes to mind is Alex Quate. She mentioned, because one of the questions I had asked her on a previous episode is, she has on her page, for example, pieces of content where she's closing a home in 12 days. And I'm like, how do you do this? And she mentions the storytelling of the marketing. Most people, when it comes to running, for example, an ad online of a home, most people, if there's no story attached to it, they're really just interacting with it just to look at the, bedrooms and bathrooms. But when you attach some sort of community aspect, interview with the owners, figure out what it is about the area that would be ideal for the person you're trying to attract with your brand, I can see where that storytelling element is super effective. With your experience, what kind of storytelling techniques or experience would you give to an audience on how to successfully market a home?
Yeah, I think that storytelling is everything right now. So, you know, buyers, the market has shifted, right? Like buyers are less concerned, at least in the wine country, and I'm sure in many other places, less concerned with the bedroom count and the square footage. They're more concerned with where are my kids going to go to school? Where are we going to ride our bikes on Sunday? How do we get to the closest freeway? How close is my job? Is my mom around the corner? Like, those are the things they care about more so than they care about square footage and bedroom count. So storytelling is super important to let people know how to find their next home. They want to know, is it close to Whole Foods? That kind of thing. So being able to explain all of those things in addition to the square footage and number of bedrooms, I think makes all the difference in whether a home sells or not.
The other thing that I've learned with my interviews here, this podcast has been really an eye opener. So, first off, thank you to all the guests, all the audience that are listening to these episodes. The reception's been awesome. It's been an eye opener on how to successfully not only just market a home, but also your brand, as we're describing personal branding in this episode. And when you mention storytelling, I see that as well with a lot of the agents that I'm talking to, where they say, these buyers and sellers that are relocating from out of state, they will come to me specifically because of the lifestyle that I either portray or have lived and I can express via conversation. And I brought this up in a previous episode, but I was speaking with a realtor in Tucson, and it was her and the number one producer in the state of Arizona was the competition between this relocation buyer, and they ended up going with her because of the lifestyle that she had with the specific community, and her brand was attracted to this specific type of buyer. And I'm sure you can relate to this when we're talking about storytelling and this lifestyle component when you're talking about wine country, showing the actual biking on Saturdays, the going with your family, touring the wine country on the brand, showing what life could be like if you moved here, I'm sure has helped tremendously build your brand as well as help people get to know you and decide that you're the one to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being in wine country, everybody knows we have wineries. Everybody knows you can go out wine tasting on the weekend. What they don't know is that every Tuesday, there's a Taco Tuesday ride that started with two men during COVID, and it's now 350 people that ride across town every Tuesday at 5 o'clock to get tacos at the local taco truck, and then they ride back together. And so, not telling that story and telling people, hey, if you're in wine country, go do the wine tasting, but then come ride your bike with us, right? And we actually won a Telly Award for that. So, telling those stories and then, even putting it on, say, YouTube for people to watch. YouTube is like the second, well, probably the third now that we have Chat GPT, but used to
Yeah.
be the second largest search engine
Yep.
on the internet. And when people are thinking about relocating, they really do want to know, like, what's it like to live there? And so if you can provide that content to them before they get there, then you're kind of the go-to, which, that's another thing I think that AI is not really going to be able to do.
Yes. Yes. And it's great that you mentioned YouTube because you're someone who is multifaceted on the platforms that you've interacted with and hosted on. My question to you now regarding YouTube content or Instagram content, either or, whichever one you want to pull from, is what type of content have you seen that really resonates most with the types of people who are looking to buy or sell with you?
Well, I think the biggest mistake that I see people doing is repurposing the same content for every platform. And I think what's important to remember is that each platform tends to have a different audience. And it's really important to understand who the audience is and what you're trying to say to that audience before you post the content. So, the content I put on YouTube, while it might be the same subject, it's going to resonate differently on YouTube than it is on Instagram. And TikTok is going to be really different from Facebook, right? Like, those are totally different audiences. So I think it's just really important that if you're going to use social media in your business, that you strategize on how you're going to use it and you think about how that content's going to be consumed and what type of, story you should be telling.
Let's break that down a little bit. When you say different types of behaviors, if you will, on different platforms, what do you mean by that? Because I have an exact idea of what you mean, but for the audience listening at home, this might be the first time they've ever had the thought of, what do
Mm.
you mean people on YouTube are different than people on Instagram and TikTok? What has your experience been?
Yeah, I mean, YouTube tends to be more long form content. People will sit and watch it. So they really want that walkthrough of the community and the house and, what's going on around it. And they'll watch all that content because, that's what there's almost like research, right? And entertainment. It's education
Mhm.
and entertainment versus TikTok is more of like you've got like 3 seconds to grab somebody's attention and they don't want to sit there and watch long form content on TikTok.
Mhm.
So I think if you're repurposing your content for the audience, you want to make sure that if you're on TikTok, you've got a hook right away, you're getting straight to the point versus YouTube where you have more room to breathe. Or if you're on Facebook, you're probably talking to like your Aunt Linda and, grandma who's across the country, doesn't get to see you that often. And they're super excited to see what you're up to. And maybe your caption tells the story more so than your content. So I think just understanding who you're talking to is what makes the difference.
Totally agree. I've also noticed the exact same thing when it comes to platform behavior. Like YouTube all day long, educational, no doubt about it. People are going to the YouTube search bar if they're not finding a video on browse and
Yes.
searching for a video to consume about a specific area versus TikTok and Instagram scrolling up, finding something that is visually appealing just for entertainment purposes. Totally different behavior and persona along with that behavior. Completely agreed.
Yeah, and a little hack that I'll just kind of, throw out there that I use a lot is if I know that I want to do content on something. So for instance, if somebody was going to move to Healdsburg, California, which is a local town here, I'll go to Google and I'll type in Healdsburg, California, and Google will tell you the top questions people are asking about that location. And it will say, like, is Healdsburg, how is Healdsburg comparing to Sonoma, for example? So I literally did a video, Healdsburg versus Sonoma. So you can find out what people are searching for really easily and then just speak to that content.
I love it. And what has resulted from some of these just for the audience to listen? Like, do you have any, notable results from some of these strategies that you're describing here?
Well, I mean, certainly my business has grown, my personal brand has grown, my GCI has grown, my sales volume has grown. So, yeah, I mean, notable results for sure, but I think even more than that, it's enriched my life in so many ways personally. And, again, kind of going back to featuring other people and giving before you ask for anything and just developing those relationships where you're able to combat all the negative media that's out there by putting out positive media, like showing people's stories, telling
I
people's
love that.
stories.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. People are really, really, really hungry for positive media right now. So if
Yes.
you can put a little
I
spotlight on your town, you're probably ahead of the game.
I completely agree with that. 100%. It was my favorite part too, being a producer as well. When I was doing real estate media, this is a story that I recently shared as well. My favorite videos that I would create for realtors were the interviews with the homeowners and actually filming like the story behind the house. Maybe you've seen those on Instagram, as well as like we have, when we were doing the media, we would have some where we would set the realtor down in the interview and have their perspective and the homeowner's perspective, and then figure out where they are going next in their journey. And those were always the most fun that we would have because
I love that.
it takes the more transactional nature of like we're just filming these types of homes that look appealing, just to get business, and it turns it into, no, we are helping someone in this important chapter of their life go from point A to point B, which is how every realtor I've talked to, they all feel the exact same way. This is not just the average transaction. I am helping someone with the most important decision that they will make in their life. That was like when we would do those interviews, those were the times where I felt that as well, that the realtors I talk to talk about all the time. So the positive media, I completely relate to in that regard. I love that. Now I want to circle it back a little bit just because there were a couple of questions that I had. Uh, and again, like there's so many ways I can pull this conversation, but I had some bookmarks in my mind that I want to talk about because I thought it would be relevant to the audience listening here.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, even going to Google and finding questions for YouTube. For someone new that's listening to this, they might be like, how the heck do you have time to post on all these platforms? How do you figure out all these platforms, especially where you're at, where today, your Instagram, you have a prominent Instagram as well as on other platforms. You seem to have figured it out to a great degree. How does someone choose where to put their energy into when all these platforms potentially could you require a different type of behavior with posting as well as audience behavior?
Mhm. That is a great question. I mean, I think it probably is wherever you're most comfortable. Again, kind of reminding you that I've been doing this for 25 years, right? So I've had to adapt and be resilient a lot. And what I've learned through that process is like you just have to embrace the next thing, right? Like it was MySpace, and then it was Facebook, and then it was Instagram, and then it was TikTok. And believe me, there are days where I'm just like, I do not want to have to learn another platform. I am so over this. But fortunately, they're all actually really similar in the ways that you post content. And so you can kind of, again, remembering your audience and how you want to format it. But that being said, I think I just started with where I was most comfortable, which was mostly Instagram. So my Instagram account goes back quite a ways just because that's where I focused my energy for a long time and then expanding from there. But I am a solo agent. I don't have an assistant. And, I just do everything myself, including my files and transaction coordinating and everything else. So, I don't recommend that really, to be honest with you, but I do have the ability to do it. And I think sometimes, it's easy to get burned out,
Mhm.
but just focus your attention where you feel passionate.
I love it. I love it. Tara, like I said, these conversations, we keep them brief, concise, value packed, out of respect of your time and ours. Is there anything as we're approaching the end of this conversation that you would like to share with the audience that we haven't highlighted in this conversation previously?
I don't think so. I mean, I just really appreciate what you're doing and putting out into the world. I think, you mentioned that you're trying to save some maybe of the newer realtors who are, preyed upon by third party vendors who are telling them they have to do all these things. And you really can just be grassroots in this business. You really can post your own videos. Social media, number one, is free. In the real estate business, we don't hear that word very often. Everybody has their hand in our pocket. Everybody's like, "Oh, well, you just have to sell one house to be able to afford this." Like we don't have bills, right? So it's really interesting to see what you're doing and really appreciated to see what you're doing to provide all this information to people and let them know that it's okay to just have a selfie video. It's okay to, start small and build. That's what you should be doing. Everybody starts small and builds.
I appreciate that, and I'll touch on that as we close out this podcast. I don't touch on it quite a bit, and for anyone that is new here, I talk about it briefly in the intros, but this seems like an appropriate time to kind of give some more insight, especially because you were pulling things out of me in this episode that I don't usually get kind of personal with my stuff. It's usually about the guests. So, um, yeah, I'll share a little bit of insight because you mentioned that, and so thank you. I I had this idea because this idea resonates most with me as well. I find, as me being a younger person, I'm only 25, and just to put some perspective to people listening, when I went to college, it was when COVID started, and that that experience, there are a lot of people my age that have been deeply affected that we don't even know about yet, but we will know in, I'm sure, decades to come with how COVID and the rise of social media have hand in hand affected so many people because it completely altered the outlooks in my life where I thought that social media had become reality. And what I was seeing online by quote unquote gurus was the said truth. That was my personal experience, and when I started talking to other realtors, I started to notice they would fall in the same traps too, where you see someone that's prominent online, an influencer per se, and they are preaching this certain strategy that seems unique or whatever the case is, and it's behind a paywall. And I would talk to especially newer agents where your whole job is commission only, and they were investing money into different techniques, digital strategies, paid ads, so on and so forth, because of what they were being influenced by online. But when I would have conversations with top producers, none of them would mention these unique strategies that
Right.
people were preaching. And so it was in real time, I realized that not only was my experience true for me, but it applies to not only just real estate, but in all industries nationwide where people are seeing things online, believing it's the truth, investing hard-earned dollars into it, especially again as a newer agent, and only for you to unfortunately sometimes be worse off than like what you're describing, where a lot of your efforts, you have um, been tremendously successful in your career, and I'm sure a lot of it has been grassroots efforts, not having to rely on third party lead vendors or paying for ads and posting on social media and having, like you said at the very beginning of this conversation, just having real connections with people. There are a million ways to do it, and you don't need to break the bank to do it. So,
Yeah, for
um,
sure. Yeah,
and
and I love that you said that, honestly. Like, I will say this. In the 25 years I've been in business, I've actually been that person. Like, I'll try it. I'll do, just, you wouldn't believe some of the things I've done, right? So, just like radio transmitters that you put inside a house and it's supposed to like beam out to people's cars, like crazy things back in the early 2000s. But I really love that you said that, and that's kind of going back to what I was talking about with the keynote that I give, about confidence, right? Because I started seeing the same thing. All these people who were claiming they were a coach, and when I dug a little deeper, they'd been in the real estate business for a year or 2 years, and I'm like, how are you a coach coaching other realtors when you've never even closed a deal yourself? That's crazy to me. So I really appreciate that you're doing this. Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate it.
It's why we need more people who are willing to just take those micro steps of bravery.
There you go. There you go. Great way to circle and end this episode. For everyone listening at home, thank you for again the I've been saying in the recent episodes, but the reception to these episodes have been awesome. The reception to our page has been awesome. It's been an honor to have you, Tara, as a guest. I never would imagine 3 months ago when I started posting that I'd be able to talk to prominent realtors like yourself.
Thanks for having
So
me.
yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for everything, and until next time, we'll talk to everyone soon.